Little update, some more revelations regarding Canada's massive housing bubble and its impending collapse. You can smell it. It's in the air. Like I say, nobody knows when it's going to happen, and those who pretend they do are only kidding themselves, and maybe those stupid enough to follow their narrative. I will even tell you right here and now, I have no idea how long Canadian people are willing to put up with this shit, or how many pieces of the puzzle, or no, not puzzle, but how many times you can pull that, like in Jenga, how many times you can keep pulling that block out before the whole fucking thing comes collapsing down. I don't know. But eventually, it will happen. This whole thing, it's built on a house of cards, so it will come crashing down eventually. It's not a matter of if, but when. Once again, we're seeing the warning signs being blared. Warning sign, warning, warning, warning. It's constantly being told to the people, but most people don't pay attention. They're too busy, right? It's a shame. They really should. It'll save them a whole lot of pain and anguish in the future. But CBC News, business. OSFI tells some banks to test for sharp drop in Vancouver and Toronto housing markets. Financial institution watchdog says the bank should stress test for 40 to 60% drop in housing prices. 40 to 60%. Think about those numbers real quick. That means your current mortgage, or when you go to refinance, whether you've taken a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, whatever to refinance, when you go to refinance, if your house is now worth anywhere from 40 to 60% less than its current valuation, when you go to refinance, the bank don't give you that leeway and say, you only have to refinance. Oh, it was worth $600,000. It's only worth $300,000 now. Yeah, you can you can just go ahead and refinance $300,000. No, you're still going to have to refinance, which puts you underwater, which means you're going to be drowning in a sea of debt. People like myself have been trying to warn you people about this stuff. You didn't want to listen. You wanted that, I guess those few times when you get your neighbors, your friends, or your family to come over and say, oh, look how wonderful my big, beautiful house is that I bought on future debt obligations that I'm not even going to be able to sustain. Well, enjoy it while it lasts. The party's going to come to an end sometime. Wait till you feel the hangover. Whew. Anyways, some of Canada's banks must stress test their ability to withstand a 50% drop in housing prices in Metro Vancouver area and a 40% drop in the Greater Toronto area, the country's banking regulator says. The Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institution also said Thursday that the banks must at least test for a 30% downturn in valuations for all other areas of the country. All other areas of the country. Although it won't really play out in some of the really super have-not provinces like New Brunswick or places like that, or rural parts of PEI and stuff. Yeah, you won't worry about too much about that. But yeah, even for the entire part of the country. So the Ponzi scheme stinks. The OSFI said that the test doesn't apply to the big six banks and HSBC. An OSFI spokesman said the regulator and the Bank of Canada work together to conduct regular macro stress tests on the big six banks, which also do their own internal testing. So I don't even know whether they're going to do a test on these smaller banks or something, I guess. I don't know, whatever, because they're not too big to fail. So they're stress testing the smaller ones, right? Because they're not too big to fail, so they might not get bailed out. They're not worried about the big ones, right? Because, hey, don't worry. Even if you fuck up, what they're saying is, we'll try to steal from the masses to pay for this shit. And to kick the can down the road a little bit longer, I guess, is what they're trying to say. In reality, they can say it all they want. They can pretend that they can make that happen all they want. But let me just tell you, as one human being, as one Canadian here in Canada, I can tell you, I can't speak for anyone else other than myself, well, and the people that I know, that none of us are going to fucking pony up and pay any of these debt obligations, ever. If it means we all have to, I've already proven it myself, that if I have to live as meek as possible so that they can't steal a whole lot from my productive wealth and capacity, yeah, I'm totally willing to do that. I'm in a good mindset. I have good family. I have great structures around me so that, yeah, my happiness is not derived from wealth. So you got no power over me. My happiness is not derived from putting myself or placing myself in massive amounts of debts to distract me from the reality. So it don't work for people like me. And there are more and more and more people like me, or even people that don't think like me. If you think you're going to force these obligations onto them, like I say, watch and see how that plays out. Just look out in the real world. Look at the younger generations. You think you're going to force these future obligations on them? Look at them. Look at the people you're trying to force them on these obligations onto. Tell me how you think that's going to work out for you. Good luck with all that one. Let's go on to the next. Yeah, I don't want to. Okay, let's go on to the next one. CMHC, Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, says list of housing markets deemed overvalued is growing. Hamilton joins Vancouver, Toronto, and others on market assessment just released Wednesday. Hamilton has joined Vancouver, Toronto, Saskatoon, and Quebec City on Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's list of markets it considers to be strongly overvalued. Strongly overvalued. The findings are included in CMHC's market assessment released Wednesday. CMHC said the evidence of overvaluation in the Hamilton market went from moderate in its April report to strong. Strong. In the Hamilton census metropolitan areas, home prices are higher than fundamental drivers such as population, employment, and income would warrant, CMHC says in its report. The federal agency said that the ratio of sales to new listings in Hamilton in the first quarter of the year was 84%, the highest quarterly level on record, as well as and well above the 75% threshold used to identify existing evidence of overheating. Many home buyers come to Hamilton from elsewhere and as such add to sales but not to listings even when they are repeat buyers, CMHC says. According to the report, Vancouver and Toronto are both concerning markets. Anyways, yeah, so it's saying basically, once again, I'll try to remember to put the links to these articles at the bottom. If not, as I'm saying these things, the reason why I do it, because if I do forget to put the links in the description of the video, you can always go back through the video and listen to what I pointed out as far as what the headline article is, put it in a Google search, and it'll show up. It's not a big deal. This one is another CBC News Business. Headline article, CMHC says list of housing markets deemed overvalued is growing. This last one is from the Globe and Mail. And like I say, these are just three that were done in like a 2 or 3 day period. Just the most recent ones. And they're not all of them, they're just the ones that I find most relevant. Our new down payment tool shows just how brutal it is out there for home buying millennials. So, once again, this brings the whole demographic effect into light to show you how, yes, it's not just a matter of my opinion or people's opinions of how things are. It's just dynamics at play, right? Demographics, dynamics at play. You just can't deny the reality of those facts. And the young people of today, unless there's some miracle that happens where there's a magic wand that gives them some massive amounts of wealth that they don't currently have or seem to be able to attain, things aren't looking good. What we're asking our young people to do in order to afford a home is cruel and unusual. This is Rob Carrick from the Globe and Mail. Buying a home in some cities now requires that you save frantically for as much as a decade or more. That's just for the down payment, mind you. That's just the down payment. Jeez. You used to be able to buy a home a decade was actually long enough to pay off an entire home. Now it's just to save up for your down payment. Jeez. This is the message delivered by the new Globe and Mail down payment tool, which was developed by my colleagues Chris Manza, Matt Lundy, and me. Saving for a home down payment is brutal if you live in not only Toronto and Vancouver, but some nearby cities as well. We launched the tool last week, and within minutes had people commenting via social media about how bummed out they were by the numbers. 11 years, 20 years, and 48 years. Never. This is how long people told us it will take them to afford a home. Is ownership so important that people put themselves through this? At Luke Fraser, at R. Carrick, 11 years in Toronto, but by then I'm sure the house will be much more, and I'll need an infinite number of years to catch up. Mikkel Hay, at Mikkel A, July 14, 2016. I vote no, but that puts me in the minority. So let's use the down payment tool to see what housing true believers are up against. One thing we should address straight off the top is that low interest rates are the biggest challenge to people saving for a down payment. Low rates make today's housing market craziness possible for holding mortgage costs at historical lows. But the flip side is that the minuscule return on the high rate savings account that are the smart choice for building down payment funds, no stocks, they're too risky in the short term. So in other words, you get no returns interest rate. So if you want to try to save money for a down payment, that money that you're putting in the bank, because the actual inflation rate is higher than the interest rate, you're actually never going to see that benefit at all, because it's always going to keep getting worse. That's the problem with having these ultra low interest rates. You can't save up for a home or a down payment when, even if you could over the course of 10 years could put away $10,000, because of the power of inflation and central planning and monetary manipulation, that $10,000 won't be worth $10,000, be worth a whole lot less of that at the time when you finally do it. So it's like I said, it's a never-ending game of trying to catch something that's traveling 1 mile an hour faster than you can. It's not going to happen, right? I'll need 20 years to save for a down payment on a house in Vancouver. That's with $50,000 already saved and $1,000 a month savings. Jesus Christ. These are people that are using this tool to figure out what it would take for them. I mean, think about it. You know damn well this it's insanity. We used a default interest rate of 0.8%, but not even 1%. But you may be able to get more elsewhere. Oh, that's for your savings. If you do see a higher rate, make sure you can get it on a tax-free savings account and not just a regular savings account. TFSAs are ideal for down payment funds because you don't lose any of your tiny gains to tax, and the money is readily accessible in case you find yourself buying a house in the spur of the moment. So if you're not taxed when you take it out, which that's another thing, a lot of deposits are taxed, which is just insane. I mean, like talk about double and triple dipping. But even once again, you're not taking into account the power of inflation. So, but they're even saying, even if you get 0.8%, as long as they don't tax that 0.8%, well, at least you might get a little bit. But in reality, you're not, because you're still going to be below the inflation rate. So, we set up the down payment tool to show how quickly people can buy a home with the minimum down payment. There's also an option to see how long it takes to build a down payment of 20%, which is enough to avoid having to pay a premium for mortgage default insurance. If you go for the minimum down payment, your timing on getting into the market is mostly a function of how much you can save each month. According to the Globe and Mail's down payment tool, I can join Toronto's housing market in 53 years. Hashtag living the dream. PickTwitter.com. It's in 53 years you guys save enough to holy Jesus Christ. Okay, here's another one. At $500 a month, you could go from zero to the minimum down payment for the average price Toronto dwelling, houses plus townhouses and condos, in a little over 6 years, and the average Vancouver dwelling in almost 11 years. In brackets, assumes 0.8% returns on your savings. But how feasible is this kind of commitment? let's assume someone in Toronto makes $45,000 gross and $37,000 after taxes and deduction. Rent at $1,000 per month reduces net pay by $12,000, and basic living and public transportation expenses plus smartphone and utilities take off another $600 per month, or $7,200 a year, and another $6,000 annually to cover $500 a month in savings, and we're left with $11,800 annually, which is below the poverty line, or $983 per month to cover the cost of socializing, dating, travel, car ownership, and upkeep, clothes, student debt repayment, gifts for friends and family, and dental and prescription costs for those that don't have benefits at work. So in other words, yeah, it's, once again, almost impossible except for a very few people in society. This may be the most depressing calculator ever for newbies hoping to buy in Tor or Vancouver with 20% down and no parental help. 6 years of that lifestyle gets you into a Toronto home at today's prices. If you wanted to factor in higher prices ahead, just increase the latest figure. A 20% bump to the average Toronto price pushes the time needed to build a down payment to almost 8.5 years, based on $500 in monthly contributions to savings. All this gets you a minimum down payment, which means enormous monthly mortgage costs of about $2,750 based on Toronto's average sales price, and a 2.5% 5-year fixed rate. So all of that shit, what they were saying is right down to just living bare bones, just barely scraping by, and it basically just gets you the down payment, which means you can get your approved for a mortgage, but yet you'll have monthly mortgage costs of at least $2,750, and at the record low interest rate of 2.5% on a 5-year fixed mortgage rate. These are the affordability fundamentals that should have millennials questioning their desire to buy a house right now in expensive cities. Alternatives: buy a condo, rent, or look at cheaper cities. Yeah, this is pretty much almost the end of the article. Yeah, it pretty much is anyways. But really, if you... what I tell my sons that are 21 and 25 is, figure a way to, whether you have to cohabitate with someone or do whatever you have to do, make your happiness first and foremost, obviously, but do not get into the housing market. Look to rent, but save yourself money. Do the things that are necessary. Deal with the immediate pain, but you'll end up benefiting with the long-term gains. This is what proper economics, Austrian economists, the whole free market economy, and proper intellectual thinkings in regards to economics, this is what it's all about. We do have to function in the world today, and there are central planners and these coercive entities that are constantly trying to mess with you. But if you're smarter and you're wise enough, they have no power over you. Do what you need to be done. If people actually did what needed to be done and dealt and took it upon themselves to suffer some immediate pain and minor negative consequences, these Ponzi schemes would collapse, and then they would be able to jump in and benefit from the decline and the collapse of these overvaluations of not just housing, but a lot of different aspects that we're talking about in the modern era. Because these central planners have lots of tools at their disposal, but they only work if the people go along and get along. If you're smart, if you're wise, you'll do everything in your power in the short term to deny them their right, their apparent authority, right, to dictate and plunder and control you. If you take it upon yourself to suffer some small pain in the near term, but at the same time destroy their whole narrative, destroy their whole plan, then you will benefit in the long run game. And you got to think, life is all about the long term, the long run game. It's all right to live in the here and moment in certain aspects, but you always got to keep at the core the long run game, your entire life. That has to be the premise in how you plan for your future, how you plan for your life. It's Canadian Libertarian. I love liberty.